There is a specific, heavy kind of silence that follows the chosen one. It is not the peaceful silence of a quiet afternoon, but rather a haunting, echoing isolation that feels like being a stranger in one's own life. If you are reading this, you likely know exactly what that weight feels like. You have sat in crowded rooms surrounded by laughter and conversation, yet felt as though an invisible glass wall separated you from everyone else. You have tried to speak your truth, only to see blank stares or judgment in the eyes of those who should have known you best. This is the weight of the call, the profound realization that the more you grow into your true self, the further you seem to drift from the normal world. This isolation is not a coincidence. It is the first hallmark of a path that few are brave enough to walk. For the chosen one, the feeling of not fitting in is not a temporary phase of adolescence or a result of social anxiety. It is a fundamental soul-level misalignment with the status quo. You may have spent years trying to shrink yourself, trying to dim your light, or mute your intuition just to find a sense of belonging. Yet, no matter how hard you tried to wear the masks of the world, they never quite fit. You were born with a different frequency, a different resonance that vibrates at a level the average crowd cannot yet perceive. This creates a deep sense of being misunderstood. When you speak of depth, they speak of surface. When you seek purpose, they seek pleasure. When you look toward the eternal, they are anchored in the temporary. This constant friction produces a wearying loneliness that can make you wonder if there is something inherently wrong with you. But here is where we must pause and shift our perspective. What if the very isolation you perceive as a curse is actually your greatest blessing? What if your inability to fit in is not a flaw in your design, but a feature of your destiny? We often mistake being set apart for being cast aside. When the world rejects you, or when you find yourself suddenly standing alone after years of being surrounded by people, the human ego interprets this as failure. We feel abandoned. We feel as though we have been forgotten by the universe or punished by God. But in the spiritual realm, rejection by man is often the loudest form of protection from the divine. The loneliness you feel is not a sign that you are unlovable. It is a sign that you are being moved into a sacred quarantine. The shift in perspective requires us to understand that God does not separate us because He wants us to suffer. He separates us because the mission He has placed upon your life is too delicate to be handled by the hands of the uninitiated. Imagine a master sculptor who has a block of rare, priceless marble. He does not leave that marble in the middle of a busy street where it can be chipped away by passers-by or covered in the dust of the city. No, he takes it into a private, quiet studio. He closes the door. He shuts out the noise. In that solitude, the sculptor begins the work that the world is not yet allowed to see. You are that masterpiece. The loneliness you feel is simply the sound of the studio door closing. It is the moment where the divine says, I need you all to myself for a while because what I'm about to build in you cannot be influenced by the opinions of the crowd. This leads us to the core message. You are being set apart, not cast aside. There is a massive theological and spiritual difference between the two. To be cast aside is to be discarded as useless. To be set apart is to be consecrated, to be made holy, which literally means to be separate. You are being refined in a way that requires a controlled environment. Think of the greatest figures in history and scripture. Before they could lead, before they could heal, and before they could change the world, they were all led into the wilderness. Moses spent 40 years in the desert. Elijah hid in a cave. Even Jesus was led by the Spirit into the isolation of the wilderness. They were not there because they were failures. They were there because the noise of society is the greatest enemy of divine revelation. If you are currently in a season where your phone is silent, where your friends have fallen away, or where your family seems like distant strangers, take a deep breath and realize that this is a sacred necessity. You are in the incubation period. If a chick is removed from the egg too early because it feels lonely in the dark, it will not survive. The shell, the isolation, is what provides the pressure necessary for strength to develop. God is using this time to deprogram you. He is stripping away the world speak that has been programmed into your mind since birth. He is removing the voices that tell you to be realistic, to be quiet, and to be small. In the vacuum of your loneliness, the only voice that remains is the voice of the Creator. And eventually, if you stay still enough, you will begin to hear your own true voice for the very first time. Validating this experience is crucial because the chosen one often carries a secret shame about their solitude. You might look at social media and see everyone else belonging, and you feel like a ghost watching a party you weren't invited to. But remember, the crowd is walking a wide path that leads to a common destination. You are walking a narrow path that leads to a throne. You cannot expect those on the wide path to understand the requirements of the narrow one. Your loneliness is the price of your entrance. It is the down payment on a level of wisdom and power that most people will never encounter. You are not alone in your loneliness. You are joined by a lineage of light bearers who have all stood exactly where you are standing now, feeling the same cold wind of isolation, yet knowing deep in their spirits that they were being prepared for something monumental. So let this be your comfort. The divine has not forgotten you. In fact, the divine is so focused on you right now that he has cleared the room so there are no distractions. The pain of being misunderstood is simply the growing pains of a soul that has outgrown its environment. You are being upgraded. You are being recalibrated. You are being hidden away so that when you finally emerge, you will be unrecognizable to the forces that once tried to keep you down. This loneliness is not your destination. It is your training ground. It is the womb of your destiny. You are not alone. You are simply in the company of the one who chose you. And that is the most powerful place you could ever be. Trust the separation. Trust the silence. You are being prepared for a glory that will make every moment of this isolation feel like a small price to pay for the strength you are about to inherit. The first reason God separates the chosen one is for vibrational protection. Every person, environment, and social circle carries a specific frequency, a collective set of energies, habits, and mindsets. When you are in the crowd, you are constantly bombarded by toxic patterns that society considers normal gossip, cynicism, the pursuit of vanity, and deep-seated limiting beliefs. These influences act like static on a radio, blurring your ability to perceive your higher purpose. God understands that as a chosen one, your spirit is highly sensitive. You are like a sponge, and if you stay submerged in a polluted social environment, you will inevitably soak up the fears and insecurities of those around you. By pulling you into a season of isolation, the divine is effectively placing you in a sterile environment. He is filtering out the voices that say, "It can't be done," or "You are not enough." This separation is an act of extreme mercy. It is God's way of ensuring that the seeds of greatness planted within you are not choked by the weeds of other people's dramas and dysfunctions. You are being shielded so that your energy can return to its natural, pure state. Building upon the concept of vibrational protection, we must dive deeper into the mechanics of how this divine separation functions as a spiritual filtration system. When we speak of being shielded from the frequency of the crowd, we are talking about the preservation of your soul's original blueprint. Every human interaction is an exchange of data. When you spend time with those who live in a state of fear lack or spiritual slumber, you are not just hearing their words. You are absorbing their energetic limitations. For the chosen one, whose purpose is to bring light or change to the world, staying too long in a low vibrational environment is like trying to keep a white silk dress clean while working in a coal mine. Eventually, the soot settles. This soot manifests as self-doubt fatigue and a strange sense of heaviness that you cannot explain. Have you ever noticed how after spending time with certain groups, you feel drained or suddenly pessimistic about your dreams? That is the static interfering with your radio. God observes this struggle. He sees the weeds of gossip, cynicism, and vanity beginning to take root in the garden of your mind. Because your mission is too vital to be compromised, the divine initiates a sacred quarantine. He removes you from the social circles, the family gatherings, or the workplace dynamics that have become toxic to your growth. This separation is often painful because we mistake the removal of people for the loss of love. In reality, it is the removal of interference. God is effectively placing you in a sterile room. In medicine, a sterile room is used for surgery or for protecting the most vulnerable patients because any outside bacteria could be fatal. Spiritually, you are currently on the operating table of the divine. You are undergoing a heart transplant, exchanging a heart burdened by worldly fear for one filled with heavenly courage. If the bacteria of common human pettiness or small-mindedness were allowed into this space, the surgery would fail. Therefore, the isolation you are experiencing is an act of supreme mercy. It is the divine's way of saying, I love you too much to let their limitations become yours. He is filtering out the voices that say, be realistic, because he is preparing you to do the impossible. When the divine filters your influences, he is also resetting your internal compass. Most people navigate life using an external compass. They look at what their neighbors are doing, what social media tells them is successful, and what their parents expect of them. This external guidance system is calibrated to the frequency of the crowd. If you are to fulfill your destiny as a chosen one, your compass must be recalibrated to the frequency of the truth. This recalibration cannot happen in a noisy room. It requires the absolute silence of the hiding place. In this sterile environment, the divine begins to wash away the limiting beliefs you didn't even know you had. You begin to realize that the things you thought were impossible were actually just the opinions of the people you used to hang out with. As your energy returns to its natural pure state, you will start to notice a change in your physical and mental clarity. The brain fog that comes from trying to please everyone begins to lift. The anxiety of keeping up with others fades away. You start to vibrate at a higher level, a frequency of peace, clarity, and sovereignty. This is the state of being in the world, but not of it. You are being trained to be a lighthouse. A lighthouse does not move toward the ships to save them. It stands firm on its own rock, vibrating its light into the darkness. But before you can be a lighthouse, you must first learn how to keep your own light burning without it being blown out by the winds of other people's opinions. Furthermore, this filtering process is about capacity building. God is expanding your container. If you are meant to hold a massive amount of divine power, wisdom, or influence, your vessel must be strong. Toxic patterns and drama act like cracks in a ceramic pot. If you try to pour high-pressure water into a cracked pot, it will shatter. The isolation is the glazing and firing of your vessel in the kiln of solitude. The heat of loneliness burns away the impurities in the clay. It seals the cracks. It makes you solid. Many people wonder why they are stuck in this lonely phase for so long. The answer is often that the vessel isn't ready yet. There is still too much crowdthink in the clay. There is still too much desire for the vanity of the world. Understand that this separation is not just about who is being taken out of your life, but what is being put into you during their absence. In the void left by the crowd, God pours in direct revelation. When you no longer have a best friend to call for advice, you are forced to call on the Spirit. When you no longer have a partner to validate your beauty, you are forced to find your worth in your Creator. This builds a primary connection that is unbreakable. Once you have found everything you need in the silence, you will never again be a slave to the presence of others. You will be able to walk back into any crowd, any city, or any conflict and remain completely unmoved because your frequency is now anchored in the eternal. The lesson of this first section is to stop fighting the filter. We often spend so much energy trying to break out of our quarantine. We try to force old doors open. We text people who have clearly moved on, and we beg for the attention of those who don't see us. Stop. You are fighting against your own protection. You are trying to jump back into the polluted water when God has just pulled you out to save your life. Embrace the sterile room. Accept the silence. Let the divine filter your world until only that which is wholly true and aligned with your purpose remains. Your energy is your most precious currency. Let the divine show you how to spend it wisely, far away from the static of the world. In this hidden season, you are learning that alone does not mean empty. It means all one. You are becoming whole within yourself and with the divine. The frequency of the crowd is a frequency of fragmentation, where people give pieces of themselves away to fit in. Your frequency is becoming one of integration. You are becoming a unified, powerful force. This is why you feel different, because you are different. You have been dipped in the fire of separation, and you are coming out tempered, refined, and vibrating at the speed of your destiny. Trust that everyone you lost was a necessary sacrifice for the version of yourself you are currently becoming. There is a profound spiritual law. Revelation requires stillness. In the modern world, we are drowned in a constant roar. The roar of social media, the roar of opinions, the roar of cultural expectations. This noise is designed to keep you looking outward, comparing your life to others, and seeking external validation. However, the chosen one is not led by external sights, but by internal insight. To access this, you must be able to hear the still small voice of the divine. This divine whisper is subtle. It does not compete for your attention. It waits for your attention. God separates you because as long as you are busy trying to fit into the conversation of the crowd, you will be deaf to the instructions of the Spirit. In the silence of your loneliness, the volume of the world is turned down to 0, and the volume of your intuition is turned up to 10. This is where the secrets of your destiny are whispered. You are not being ignored by the world. You are being invited into a private dialogue with the Creator. It is only in this silence that you can receive the specific blueprints for your life that the crowd is not permitted to hear. There is a profound spiritual law. Revelation requires stillness. In the modern world, we are drowned in a constant roar. The roar of social media, the roar of opinions, the roar of cultural expectations. This noise is designed to keep you looking outward, comparing your life to others, and seeking external validation. However, the chosen one is not led by external sights, but by internal insight. To access this, you must be able to hear the still small voice of the divine. This divine whisper is subtle. It does not compete for your attention. It waits for your attention. God separates you because as long as you are busy trying to fit into the conversation of the crowd, you will be deaf to the instructions of the Spirit. In the silence of your loneliness, the volume of the world is turned down to 0, and the volume of your intuition is turned up to 10. This is where the secrets of your destiny are whispered. You are not being ignored by the world. You are being invited into a private dialogue with the Creator. It is only in this silence that you can receive the specific blueprints for your life that the crowd is not permitted to hear. To understand why the roar of the world is so dangerous to the chosen one, we must look at the nature of spiritual frequency. The world operates on a frequency of high volume, low depth. It is a constant stream of information trends and anxieties that keep the human mind in a state of perpetual fight or flight. When your nervous system is trapped in this state, your spiritual ears are effectively blocked. The still small voice of the divine is a frequency of low volume, infinite depth. It is like a delicate melody being played in a room where a heavy metal concert is screaming at full blast. You cannot hear the melody not because it isn't playing, but because you are too close to the speakers. This is why the divine must physically or socially pull you away. The silence of loneliness is in reality a divine recording studio. In a recording studio, the walls are thick and soundproof to ensure that no outside traffic or noise ruins the track. You are currently on track. If God allowed you to remain in the middle of the world's roar, your life song would be distorted. You would start to include the world's lyrics in your own destiny. You would start to believe that your success is measured by likes, or that your value is determined by your productivity. But in the silence, God turns the world's volume down to zero. Suddenly, the hum of your own soul becomes audible. You begin to notice the subtle nudges of intuition that you ignored for years because you were too busy answering emails, scrolling through feeds, or trying to manage other people's perceptions of you. This private dialogue with the Creator is where specific blueprints are delivered. General information is for the crowd. Specific instructions are for the individual. Think of a general in an army. He doesn't broadcast the secret battle plans over a public radio frequency where the enemy can hear them. He calls his most trusted officers into a private soundproof tent. He whispers the strategy. You are being called into that tent. The reason your life feels quiet right now is that God is sharing classified information with you. He is showing you the moves you need to make in the next 5 years, the people you need to avoid, and the gifts you need to cultivate. If you were still surrounded by the roar, you would accidentally leak these plans, or worse, you would let the skepticism of others talk you out of them. When the volume of your intuition is turned up to 10, you begin to develop a sense of spiritual discernment. You start to see through the illusions of the world. What once seemed attractive, the hustle culture, the hollow fame, the surface-level friendships now seems incredibly loud and empty. This is a sign of your ears being recalibrated. You are learning to distinguish between the voice of your ego, which screams, and the voice of the spirit, which whispers. The ego screams because it is afraid. The spirit whispers because it is certain. In the silence, you realize that you don't need to shout to be powerful. You learn that the most world-changing ideas in history didn't come from a brainstorm in a crowded room. They came from a single person, sitting alone in the quiet, listening to the whisper of inspiration. Furthermore, this section of your journey is about developing the inner ear. Just as a musician can hear a single out-of-tune note in a massive orchestra, the chosen one must be able to hear a single out-of-alignment thought in a sea of opinions. This level of precision is only built in solitude. God is training you to be inner-directed. Most people are outer-directed. They are like weather vanes turning whichever way the wind of public opinion blows. But a chosen one must be like a compass, always pointing north regardless of the storm. The north is the still small voice. By separating you, the divine is breaking your addiction to external validation. He is teaching you that his well done is louder than the world's Hosanna. The loneliness you feel is the incubation of authority. True authority is not seized. It is birthed in the secret place. When you emerge from this silence, you will speak with a weight and a clarity that others cannot mimic. People will wonder why your words have so much power, why your presence changes the atmosphere of a room. It is because you aren't just repeating what you heard on the news or on social media. You are speaking what you heard in the private dialogue. You are bringing the blueprints of heaven down to earth. The crowd cannot hear what you hear, but they will eventually see the results of what you heard. They see the building, but you saw the blueprint in the dark. One of the most difficult aspects of this silence is the feeling of being ignored. You may feel like the world has moved on without you, that you are being left behind by your peers who are getting married, getting promoted, or traveling the world. But you must understand, the world can only ignore what it can see. God has cloaked you. He has put a veil over you to keep you hidden while the software update is downloading. If you were visible right now, you would be susceptible to the viruses of envy and interference. Trust that being ignored by the world is a sign that you are being adored by the divine. He is keeping your attention fixed on him because what he is about to give you is so big, it requires your total, undivided focus. In this silence, you also learn the art of spiritual observation. When you stop talking so much to fit in, you start seeing things as they truly are. You see the pain behind people's masks. You see the emptiness of the system society worships. This observation is part of your training. You are being given eyes to see and ears to hear. This is the clarity of voice. It is not just about how you speak, but the clarity from which you perceive. You are becoming a seer. A seer cannot stay in the middle of the crowd because the crowd is too close to the picture to see the whole image. You have been moved back away from the canvas so you can see the entire masterpiece God is painting. Finally, remember that the silence is a preparation for the roar of success. If you cannot handle the silence of being a nobody, you will be destroyed by the noise of being a somebody. The loneliness is a test of your character. Will you still seek God when no one is watching? Will you still follow the still small voice when it tells you to do something that makes no sense to the world? If you can stay faithful in the silence, God can trust you with the platform. He is silencing the world now, so that when it is your turn to speak, your voice will be pure, untainted, and filled with the resonance of the divine. You are not alone in the silence. You are in the holiest classroom in the universe. The ultimate lesson of this stage is that you are being hidden in what the scriptures call the secret place. The purpose of this hiding is to protect your vision. When you are constantly surrounded by people, you unconsciously begin to view your life through the lens of their expectations. You start to measure success by their yardsticks and define happiness by their definitions. This pollution of vision is dangerous for a chosen one because your path is intended to be original, not a copy. By keeping you in the secret place, God ensures that your vision remains unpolluted by societal norms. He is giving you a heavenly perspective that allows you to see things as they truly are not, as society portrays them. This isolation is a period of deprogramming where your eyes are washed clean of the illusions of the world. The lesson is simple, yet deep. You cannot see the stars if you are standing under the bright artificial lights of the city. You must go into the dark, quiet outskirts to see the magnitude of the universe. Your loneliness is that darkness, a necessary backdrop that allows your divine vision to shine with absolute clarity. To truly understand the secret place, we must recognize it as a spiritual laboratory of authenticity. In the physical world, when an inventor is working on a groundbreaking technology, they don't do it in the middle of a public park. They work in a high-security lab where industrial espionage cannot occur. Your soul is currently in that high-security lab. The espionage God is protecting you from is the theft of your originality. We are living in a copy-paste culture where everyone is subconsciously imitating the top 1% of what they see on their screens. If you stayed in the crowd, you would eventually become a derivative of someone else's destiny. You would start building a life that looks good to others but feels hollow to you. God loves you too much to let you succeed at being someone you were never meant to be. This pollution of vision is subtle. It seeps in through casual conversations, through the shoulds and musts, whispered by friends and family, and through the invisible pressure to achieve certain milestones by a certain age. When you are hidden, these yardsticks are taken away. In the secret place, there is no one to impress. There is no one to compete with. There is only you and the infinite. In this vacuum, the artificial lights of societal expectation begin to flicker and die. At first, this darkness is terrifying because we have been trained to fear being lost. But as your eyes adjust to the spiritual darkness of your isolation, you begin to see the stars, the celestial, eternal truths of your existence that were always there, but were drowned out by the glare of the city. The deprogramming process is the most painful but necessary part of the secret place. Think of it as a system restore for your soul. From the moment we are born, we are programmed by our environment. We are told what is valuable, what is shameful, and what is realistic. For the chosen one, much of this programming is actually a virus that prevents your divine software from running. The divine must pull you into isolation to run a virus scan. He is washing your eyes with the water of truth. You are learning that success might actually mean peace of mind rather than a high-ranking title. You are learning that happiness might be found in a simple walk in nature rather than a luxury purchase. This is the heavenly perspective, seeing the world through the eyes of the Creator rather than the eyes of the consumer. In the secret place, you are also being protected from premature exposure. There is a law in nature that says things grow best in the dark before they reach for the light. A seed must struggle beneath the soil in total isolation before it breaks the surface. If you were to be exposed to the world's scrutiny before your vision was fully set, the wind of criticism would blow you over. God is keeping you hidden to strengthen your root system. He is ensuring that your sense of self is so deeply anchored in Him that when you eventually step back into the light, no amount of fame, no amount of hatred, and no amount of distraction can move you. You are being hardened like steel in a furnace. The furnace is closed and dark, but it is the only place where the metal becomes unbreakable. This isolation teaches you the magnitude of the universe. When you are in the city of social interaction, your world is very small. It's limited to the gossip of your circle, the politics of your job, and the trends of the week. But in the dark outskirts of loneliness, you start to contemplate the eternal. You start to ask the big questions. Why am I here? What is my soul's true signature? What does the divine want to say through my life? These questions require a vast, quiet space to be answered. The magnitude you discover in the secret place is your own internal infinity. You realize that you are not just a person trying to survive. You are a divine conduit. This realization is so powerful that it would overwhelm you if you were still trying to manage a busy social calendar. Furthermore, the secret place is where you learn to trust your own eyes. Most people see what they are told to see. If the media says a situation is a crisis, they feel panic. If the culture says a certain lifestyle is the dream, they chase it. But the chosen one is being trained to see the hidden dimensions. You are being taught to see the opportunity in the crisis and the emptiness in the dream. This unpolluted vision is your greatest weapon. When you return to society, you will be the one who sees the solution when everyone else only sees the problem. You will be the one who sees the soul of a person when everyone else only sees their mistakes. This X-ray vision of the spirit is only granted to those who have sat long enough in the silence to let the scales fall from their eyes. The lesson of the darkness being a necessary backdrop is a profound one. In photography, the negative must be developed in a dark room. If you turn on the light too soon, the image is ruined. You are currently in the divine dark room. The experiences of your life, the pain, the joy, the struggle are being developed into a clear picture of your purpose. Every moment of loneliness is a chemical bath that makes the image sharper. Do not rush the process. Do not try to turn on the lights before the image is set. If you stay in the secret place until the divine says, "It is finished," you will emerge with a vision so clear and so powerful that it will command the attention of the very world that once ignored you. Finally, understand that being hidden is a sign of exclusivity. In the world, the most common items are displayed on the front shelves for everyone to touch and see. But the most precious jewels are kept in a velvet-lined box in a vault in the back of the store. They are only brought out for special occasions or for the right eyes. You are not on the front shelf right now because you are not a common item. You are a jewel of the kingdom. The secret place is your velvet-lined box. It is not a prison. It is a place of high-value storage. You are being preserved. You are being kept unspotted from the world. The next time you feel the sting of isolation, remember the city lights and the stars. The city lights are beautiful, but they are artificial. They flicker and they die out. The stars are eternal. They are vast and they guide sailors home. God has taken you away from the flickering lights so you can become a star mapper for others. You are learning to navigate by the eternal, and that is a skill that can never be learned in a crowd. Embrace your unpolluted vision. Cherish the secret place. It is here and only here that you will see the face of God so clearly that you will eventually begin to reflect His light in your own. The first lesson of the wilderness is the development of spiritual sovereignty. In the world, we are often propped up by our social structures, our titles, and the constant feedback of others. This creates a fragile strength, one that collapses the moment people stop supporting us. However, the chosen one is destined for a mission that will inevitably face opposition, skepticism, and storms. Therefore, you cannot rely on external scaffolding. Loneliness forces you to develop internal armor. When there is no one to call for comfort, you learn to comfort yourself through the divine. When there is no one to fight your battles, you learn to pick up your spiritual sword and stand your ground. This is the law of spiritual growth. If you aren't broken by the crowd's pressure, you must be built in the silence's pressure. The silence acts as a weight room for the soul. Each day you spend in isolation, without losing your faith, you are lifting the weight of solitude, making your spirit thicker, tougher, and more resilient. By the time you emerge, you will possess a quiet confidence that wasn't given to you by men, and therefore cannot be taken away by men. To expand on the concept of internal armor and the development of spiritual sovereignty, we must examine the specific chemistry of what happens when a soul is forged in the vacuum of isolation. When we live in the constant company of others, our strength is often outsourced. We rely on a spouse for emotional regulation, a boss for a sense of purpose, or a social circle for a sense of identity. This is what spiritual teachers call borrowed light. Borrowed light is beautiful, but it is conditional. If the source of that light leaves, you are plunged into darkness. The chosen one cannot afford to operate on borrowed light. You are being called to be a source of light yourself, and a source must generate its own power from within. This is why the scaffolding must fall. Imagine a great cathedral being built. While it is under construction, it is surrounded by ugly, metallic scaffolding that holds it up. To a passerby, the scaffolding is necessary, but it hides the beauty of the stone. Once the cathedral is self-supporting, once the arches are locked in place and the foundation has settled, the scaffolding is torn down. The cathedral now stands by its own weight, defying gravity through its own structural integrity. You are that cathedral. The loneliness you feel is simply the sound of the scaffolding being removed. It feels unstable at first. You feel exposed to the wind and the rain, but this exposure is what forces your spiritual mortar to harden. It forces you to discover the internal armor that was hidden beneath the social support systems you used to rely on. In this weight room of the soul, every hour of loneliness is a repetition. Every night spent wondering why me, and yet choosing to trust the process is a set of heavy lifts for your faith. In the world, resilience is often misunderstood as toughness or aggression. But in the spiritual realm, resilience is the ability to remain soft in a hard world. To develop this, you must learn to comfort yourself through the divine. This is a level of intimacy that the crowd never reaches. When you have no one to vent to, you are forced to pray. When you have no one to cry with, you are forced to sit in the presence of the Holy Spirit. This creates a closed-loop system of emotional and spiritual health. You become like a submarine that can withstand the crushing pressure of the deep ocean because its internal pressure is perfectly regulated. You no longer need the world to be kind for you to be peaceful. This internal armor is also your spiritual sword. A sword is not forged in a freezer. It is forged in a furnace and beaten on an anvil. The silence's pressure is that anvil. In the silence, you are forced to confront your own demons, your fears, your traumas, and your insecurities. In a crowd, you can distract yourself from these things. You can go to a party, watch a movie, or get lost in a conversation. But in the wilderness, there is no escape. You must face the shadows. Each time you face a shadow and overcome it through the Word of God or through the power of your own spirit, your armor grows a new plate. You are becoming battle-ready. The mission God has for you is not a playground. It is a battleground for the souls of others. You cannot lead people through their own darkness if you haven't first conquered the darkness in your own room. The quiet confidence you gain in this season is distinct because it is non-reactive. Most people's confidence is reactive. If they get a compliment, they feel high. If they get a criticism, they feel low. But the armor built in the silence is built on the rock. It is a confidence that says, I know who I am because I have seen myself at my lowest, and I have seen the divine pick me up when no human hand was available. This makes you dangerous to the kingdom of darkness. You cannot be bribed with praise because you've already learned to live without it. You cannot be intimidated by threats because you've already survived the death of your social life. You have become a self-sovereign being. This sovereignty is the prerequisite for true leadership. Most people who seek power are actually seeking compensation. They want to lead so they can finally feel important. But the chosen one is stripped of the need to be important before they are given power. God builds you in the silence so that when He eventually puts you on a platform, you won't use that platform to feed your ego. You will use it to serve the mission. The built-in-the-silence version of you is someone who can stand in front of thousands of people and feel the same peace you felt when you were sitting alone in your bedroom. Your internal state is no longer a victim of your external environment. Furthermore, the internal armor acts as a frequency filter. As you become more resilient, you stop being tossed to and fro by the emotions of others. You can walk into a room full of anger and remain calm. You can walk into a room full of despair and remain hopeful. You have become an atmosphere shifter. Instead of the room changing you, you change the room. But this shifting power only comes to those who have mastered their own internal atmosphere during the long, lonely nights of the wilderness. You had to learn how to generate your own joy when the world gave you none. You had to learn how to generate your own hope when the facts looked bleak. The lesson of the wilderness is that nothing is missing. We think we are alone because we are lacking connection. But in the silence, you realize you are full of the divine. You realize that the one plus God is always the majority. This is the ultimate armor, the realization that you are never ever alone. The crowd was actually a distraction from the constant loving presence that has been with you since the beginning. Once you truly know this, not just as an idea, but as a felt reality in your bones. The loneliness vanishes. It is replaced by a solitude of power. You are being built for a specific weight of glory. If God gave you the glory before the armor, the glory would crush you. He is taking his time with you because the cathedral of your life is meant to stand for generations. Do not envy those who are propped up by the scaffolding of popularity. Scaffolding is temporary. The stone is forever. Every day you stay in the silence. Every day you choose to be built rather than broken. You are becoming a monument to God's strength. You are becoming the kind of person that others will eventually run to for shelter. The wilderness is not where you go to die. It is where you go to become truly alive. One of the most profound functions of the wilderness is the removal of the mask. Most of us, consciously or unconsciously, are performers. We act in ways that ensure we are liked, accepted, or respected by our peers. This social ego is a major barrier to divine purpose because it seeks the glory of man rather than the will of God. In the wilderness, however, the audience is gone. There is no one to perform, for no one to impress, and no one to like your status. This total lack of an audience creates a crisis for the ego, but a feast for the soul. Without a crowd to validate your masks, the masks begin to crumble. You are forced to look in the mirror and face the raw, unedited version of yourself. This is where you discover who you truly are when no one is watching. God uses this time to strip away the people-pleasing layers that you have accumulated over decades. He is peeling back the false identities to reveal the original soul signature beneath. It is a painful stripping, but it is necessary. You cannot carry out a divine assignment while wearing a costume designed by society. The process of stripping the ego is perhaps the most agonizing stage of the chosen one's journey because it feels like a death. In a way, it is. It is the death of the fictional self, the person you created to survive high school, the person you polished to succeed in your career, and the person you curated to be loved by your family. We are all born into a world that hands us a script before we can even speak. We are told how to dress, how to laugh, and what to value. Over time, these scripts become masks, and eventually the masks become so fused to our faces that we forget who is underneath. God in his infinite wisdom knows that he cannot pour new wine into these old wineskins. He must remove the performer to save the person. When the audience is removed, the ego enters a state of withdrawal. The ego feeds on attention validation and feedback. It thrives on being someone in the eyes of others. When you are suddenly plunged into isolation, the ego begins to starve. This is why the first few months of the chosen one loneliness feel like an identity crisis. You might feel worthless, invisible, or irrelevant. This is not because you are those things, but because the performer inside you is screaming for a stage that no longer exists. God has turned off the spotlights and closed the curtain. He has sent the audience home. He has left you in the empty theater of your own life so that you can finally stop acting. This crisis for the ego is a feast for the soul. While the ego is starving, the soul is finally being fed the hidden manna of truth. Without the noise of the crowd telling you who you should be, you are forced to confront the raw, unedited version of your existence. This is a terrifying mirror to look into. You might see parts of yourself that you've suppressed for years, your hidden anger, your deepest fears, or your long-forgotten dreams. But you will also see your original soul signature. This is the version of you that existed before the world got its hands on you. It is the version of you that God smiled upon before you were even formed in the womb. The stripping away of people-pleasing layers is an act of spiritual surgery. People-pleasing is a form of idolatry. It puts the opinions of man above the commands of the divine. If you are constantly scanning the room to see if people approve of you, you cannot scan the heavens to see what God requires of you. You cannot be a God pleaser and a people pleaser at the same time. The costume designed by society is too heavy and too restrictive for the work you have been called to do. Imagine a marathon runner trying to compete in a suit of armor designed by a fashion designer. It might look good to the spectators, but it will prevent the runner from ever reaching the finish line. God is stripping you down to your running gear, the essential, authentic parts of your being that are built for endurance and purpose. As these false identities peel away, you may experience a period of profound emptiness. You might ask, if I am not a successful professional, or a good friend, or the funny one in the group, then who am I? This void is a holy space. Do not try to fill it with distractions. Let it be empty. In that emptiness, you will begin to hear the heartbeat of your true self. You will find that you have interests that have nothing to do with what is cool. You will find that you have a voice that sounds nothing like the voices you used to imitate. This is the discovery of the true self, and it can only happen when the performative self has been buried in the wilderness. The stripping is painful because we are attached to our masks. We think the masks are what make us lovable. We fear that if people saw the unedited version of us, they would leave. God proves this fear wrong by showing you that He is still there. When you are at your most stripped, your most broken, and your most unproductive, God's love remains constant. This is the most healing realization a chosen one can have. You learn that you are loved for your being, not your doing. You learn that your worth is inherent, not earned. This realization breaks the power of the ego forever. Once you know you are loved by the Creator, in your rawest state, you no longer feel the need to perform for the creation. Furthermore, this stripping process prepares you for the weight of divine authority. A person who still needs the world's approval is dangerous in a position of power. They will compromise the truth to stay popular. They will bend the rules to be liked. They will use their influence to feed their own insecurities. But a person who has been processed in the wilderness is different, because you have already faced your own nakedness and found God there. You are incorruptible. You don't need the crown the world offers because you have already found the kingdom within. You don't need the applause of the crowd because you have already heard the well done in the silence. The original soul signature that emerges is your superpower. No one can compete with you at being you. The world is full of copies, but it is starving for an original. By removing your masks, God is preparing to present an original to the world. This is why your path is original, not a copy. Your divine assignment requires a specific vibration that only your authentic self can emit. If you are even 1% performative, the signal will be distorted. The stripping is the tuning of the instrument. The strings must be tightened, and the old grime must be wiped away, so that when the master musician plays through you, the sound is pure and life-changing. The lesson here is to let the masks fall. Stop trying to glue the pieces of your old life back together. Stop trying to revive the performer who died in the wilderness. Mourn the loss if you must, but do not try to resurrect what God has intentionally buried. The person you are becoming is much more powerful than the person you used to be. The raw, unedited version of you is exactly who the world needs right now, even if the world doesn't know it yet. You are being prepared for a divine presentation, not a performance. A performance is about you. A presentation is about the light that shines through you. In the end, you will look back at this painful stripping with deep gratitude. You will realize that the masks were actually prisons. They kept you trapped in a cycle of seeking validation that never truly satisfied you. In the wilderness, you found freedom. You found the freedom to be tired, the freedom to be imperfect, and the freedom to be exactly who God made you to be. You have traded the glory of man for the will of God, and that is the greatest trade a human being can ever make. You are no longer an actor on a stage. You are a son or daughter of the Most High standing in the truth, ready for whatever comes next. The ultimate lesson of this stage is the transition of dependency. A true leader, a chosen one, cannot be a slave to the applause of people. If you live for their hosannas today, you will die by their crucify him tomorrow. Public opinion is a shifting sand, and God will not allow your destiny to be built on such an unstable foundation. God detaches you from others specifically so you can learn to lean entirely on him. This is vertical alignment. Most people live horizontally, leaning on friends, partners, or careers for their sense of security. But a chosen one must be a vertical being. You are being trained to find your total validation, your total security, and your total joy in the divine presence alone. When you finally reach the point where you are perfectly content standing alone with God, you have passed the test. You have become unshakable. You are now ready to lead others because you no longer need them to define your worth. You have learned that the only approval that matters is the one from the source that called you into the wilderness in the first place. The spiritual law is simple. You cannot pour from an empty cup. Before this season of loneliness, you may have been a person who gave too much, who lived for others, or who operated on a shallow battery of spiritual energy. God recognized that the mission ahead of you is so massive that your old capacity would have resulted in burnout or spiritual exhaustion. This period of isolation is a divine upgrading of your capacity. Imagine a small clay pot being expanded into a massive reservoir. The stretching of the clay is painful. It feels like emptiness, like a void that cannot be filled. But in reality, God is deepening the vessel of your soul. He is clearing out the debris of your past to make room for a new level of spiritual and emotional power. You aren't just being comforted, you are being refilled with a substance the world cannot provide. This is a period of high-level maintenance where your spiritual engine is being rebuilt for a long-distance journey. When you finally step back into the world, you won't just have a few drops to give you, will be an overflowing fountain. The word consecrated literally means to be set apart for a holy purpose. In this second part of the preparation, God is aligning your heart with a frequency that the average person simply cannot perceive yet. If you were still in the middle of the crowd, your heart would be out of sync with the divine plan because you would still be vibrating at the speed of social trends. God is taking you through a process of spiritual recalibration. He is whispering the details of a specific task, a calling that is unique to your soul signature. This mission might involve healing those who are broken, innovating a new way of thinking, or leading a movement of truth. Because this mission is so original, it requires a heart that is no longer influenced by common logic or peer pressure. You are being sanctified, cleaned and prepared like a surgeon's tool before a life-saving operation. The surgeon does not leave his tools on the floor of the waiting room. He keeps them in a sterile, separate place until the exact moment of the procedure. You are that tool, and your time is coming. The ultimate lesson for the chosen one is this: the greater the calling, the more intense the separation. If you feel like your loneliness is extraordinary, it is only because the work you are destined to do is extraordinary. You are not being punished. You are being prepared for a high-level assignment. The irony of the chosen one's journey is that you are being prepared to serve the very people you are currently separated from. You are being hidden so that you can later heal. You are being silenced so that you can later speak with authority. You are being isolated so that you can eventually lead with a heart that is not seeking validation, but seeking to give life. Your wilderness is not a dead end. It is the bridge to your destiny. The separation is the proof of the promotion. Once the vessel is deep enough and the alignment is perfect, the doors will swing open and you will step out not as the person who entered the silence, but as a transformed force of nature. Your loneliness has been a sacred incubation. You have moved from the weight of the call, through the filter of influence, survived the wilderness of the ego, and finally reached the depth of the vessel. You are not alone. You are surrounded by a cloud of witnesses and a divine presence that has never left your side. The silence is ending, and the refining fire has done its work. You are now unshakable, unpolluted, and ready. Embrace the last moments of this stillness, for you are about to be revealed to the world as the masterpiece you were always meant to be. The first step toward your new life is a fundamental shift in vocabulary. Loneliness is a state of lack. It is the painful feeling that something is missing, that you are incomplete without the world's presence. Solitude, however, is a state of fullness. It is the realization that you are alone, only in the physical sense, but spiritually, you are teeming with life presence and divine connection. To embrace solitude is to recognize that the void you once feared has been filled by the Creator. You are no longer waiting for someone to walk through the door to make you feel significant. You have found your significance in the quiet hum of your own soul. In loneliness, you are a victim of your isolation. In solitude, you are the master of it. This is the transition from a starving spirit to a satisfied one. When you stop looking at your room as an empty cell and start seeing it as a private sanctuary, you have mastered the lesson. You are not by yourself. You are with yourself and the divine. This fullness of presence is the ultimate power, for the person who is content in their own company can never be manipulated or broken by the world. If you still feel the sting of isolation, look to the greatest examples in spiritual history. You are walking a path that has been tread by the feet of giants. Before Jesus began his public ministry, he was led by the Spirit into the wilderness for 40 days of absolute isolation. He was not sent there because he was unloved. He was sent there to face the shadows and to solidify his vertical alignment. The prophets, the healers, and the visionaries of every age all had their wilderness period. This is your divine assurance. Your isolation is the hallmark of your importance. The world's greatest work is always preceded by a season of being hidden. If the divine did not spare his own from the wilderness, it is because the wilderness is the only place where the human is stripped away to reveal the holy. You are in the company of the most elite souls to ever walk the earth. When you feel the weight of the silence, remember that it is the same silence that prepared the way for the most world-changing miracles in history. You are not being punished. You are being patterned after the divine. The final lesson is one of patience and trust. Your isolation is the incubation period for your destiny. Think of a butterfly in a chrysalis, or a child in the womb. To the outside observer, nothing is happening. It is dark, it is quiet, and it looks like a state of stagnation. But inside that darkness, a total molecular restructuring is taking place. If you were to escape your isolation too early, you would emerge without the wings necessary to fly or the strength necessary to survive. Hold on and trust the process. Do not rush the silence. Do not beg for the doors to open before your training is complete. This lonely season is the greatest investment God has ever made in you. He is protecting you, refining you, and filling you until you are ready to burst forth. You are not being kept from your life. You are being prepared for a life that is far beyond your current imagination. Your isolation has an expiration date, but the strength you gain here is eternal. You are the chosen one. Your solitude is your strength. Your silence is your power. And your lonely path is leading you straight to a glory that will illuminate the world. You began this journey feeling like an outcast, a ghost in a world that didn't understand you. But through this exploration, we have seen that every misunderstanding was a filter, every rejection was a protection, and every void was a vessel being deepened. You are not alone, because the one who called you is the one who sustains you. The weight of the call is heavy, because the crown you are being prepared to wear is made of gold, not tinsel. Go forth with your head held high. The world will soon see what the silence has built.